The word priceless gets thrown around casually in everyday conversation, but in the context of major disruptions like prolonged grid failures, economic collapse, or irreversible supply chain breakdowns, it takes on an entirely different meaning. We're not talking about what's expensive right now. We're talking about what becomes impossible to obtain at any price when the systems we depend on stop functioning. What's particularly interesting is that most items that become truly priceless aren't expensive, tactical, or even exciting. They're the quiet, practical, everyday things that most people overlook simply because they're accustomed to having them readily available. Let's start with the ability to purify water. Notice the emphasis on ability, not just water itself. Water exists everywhere. It falls from the sky, sits in streams, ponds, and even toilet tanks. The challenge isn't finding water, but making it safe to drink. After roughly 3 days without clean water, the human body enters serious distress. In a prolonged collapse scenario, municipal water treatment ceases to function, and bottled water deliveries stop entirely. What becomes invaluable is the knowledge and tools to transform any water source into something drinkable. This means having water filters rated to remove bacteria and protozoa at minimum, purification tablets as backup, and understanding that household bleach can work in emergencies at about 8 drops per gallon of clear water, left to sit for 30 minutes. It also means knowing how to build basic solar stills or collect and filter rainwater. The person who can turn murky creek water into safe drinking water possesses something more valuable than precious metals. Quality gravity filters cost between $50 and $100 right now. Purification tablets run just a few dollars for a bottle that treats dozens of gallons. These tools are affordable now and should be considered non-negotiable. Fire-starting redundancy represents another critical element. Fire creation is so effortless in modern times that we forget how challenging it becomes without contemporary tools. Fire does far more than provide warmth, though that's certainly important. It purifies water, cooks food, provides light, and offers a psychological sense of safety that's difficult to overstate. The key concept here is redundancy. One lighter isn't sufficient. One method isn't enough. What becomes priceless is having multiple ways to create fire because each method has potential failure points. Lighters run out of fuel or break. Matches get wet. Ferro rods require dry tinder and skill to use effectively. Building layers make sense. Disposable lighters are inexpensive, so buy them in bulk and store them in different locations. Keep waterproof matches as backup. Have a ferro rod and striker as backup to your backup. Here's something most people miss. Store reliable tinder materials. Cotton balls soaked in petroleum jelly. Commercial fire. Starters, or even dryer lint sealed in plastic bags all work. Starting fire in wet conditions with natural materials is genuinely difficult, and having reliable tinder makes everything easier. After a collapse, a single working lighter could legitimately be worth a week's worth of food in trade. Basic medical supplies and knowledge form another crucial category with 2 equally important components. The supply side is fairly obvious. Bandages, antiseptic, pain relievers, antibiotic ointment, tweezers, medical tape, and basic first aid materials. These items are remarkably cheap right now and will become worth their weight in gold when pharmacies aren't restocking. But the knowledge component is what truly becomes priceless. Do you know how to properly clean and dress a wound to prevent infection? Can you recognize the signs of infection if it develops? Do you know when a cut needs stitches versus when it can heal independently? Do you understand how to treat dehydration, recognize shock, or stabilize a sprain? A first aid kit without the knowledge to use it is merely a box of stuff. Someone who actually understands basic wound care can set a simple splint and knows when something is serious versus when it isn't, becomes one of the most valuable members of any community. If you've never taken a first aid course, the investment of a few hours could literally save lives, including your own. Prescription medication management deserves serious consideration, particularly for those who depend on daily medications like blood pressure medication, insulin, thyroid medication, or psychiatric drugs. Most prescriptions are written for 30 days at a time, and insurance often won't cover refills until you're nearly out, meaning most people are never more than a few weeks away from serious problems if supply chains fail. Experienced individuals in this space have honest conversations with their doctors about building small buffers. Sometimes, doctors will write 90-day prescriptions instead of 30-day ones. Sometimes they'll allow refills a few days early each month, which accumulates over time. This isn't about gaming systems, but having respectful conversations with healthcare providers about preparedness. Most doctors understand these concerns when approached properly. For those taking medications needed long-term, working on this now, slowly and legally, one refill at a time, could genuinely mean the difference between life and death in prolonged crisis. Shelf-stable calories that require no cooking represent another often overlooked category. Much discussion in preparedness circles focuses on rice, beans, and wheat, which makes sense as excellent long-term storage foods. But there's a scenario that doesn't get enough attention. What if you can't cook? Perhaps your fuel runs out, you're on the move. It's unsafe to make fire because you don't want to draw attention, or you're sick or injured without energy to prepare meals. What becomes priceless in those moments is food requiring zero preparation. Peanut butter, canned meats and fish with pull tabs, trail mix, honey, energy bars, dried fruit, and even hard candy for quick energy all fit this category. These aren't exciting options or choices for nice dinners, but they're calories you can eat straight from packaging. Build this into food storage not as the main supply, but as a layer. A few jars of peanut butter, some cans of tuna or chicken with easy open lids, and a stash of granola bars are simple, boring, and potentially life-saving. Light that doesn't depend on the grid becomes essential because humans aren't built for darkness. We function poorly without light, both practically and psychologically. After sunset, you can't accomplish much in true darkness. You can't read, work on projects, or even walk through your own home safely. In prolonged power outages, darkness becomes oppressive in ways that are hard to understand until experienced. Like fire, redundancy matters here. LED flashlights are remarkable, using very little power, lasting for years, and producing impressive light. Stock extra batteries and consider rechargeable batteries with small solar chargers. Candles are ancient technology, but they work. They're cheap and provide ambient light that flashlights can't match. A single candle won't let you read a book, but it transforms a pitch-black room into manageable space. Tea lights by the hundred cost almost nothing right now. Oil lamps offer more sustained light using fuel that stores well. Kerosene or lamp oil can sit for years. Headlamps are underrated because they free your hands while providing directed light for tasks. Get variety, store them in accessible places, and test them occasionally. Sanitation and hygiene supplies matter more than almost anything, even though discussing them is deeply unglamorous. In normal times, we flush toilets without thought, wash hands with soap and clean water, shower, and do laundry. All these systems depend on infrastructure, running water, sewage treatment, electricity. When infrastructure fails, sanitation becomes critical because disease spreads through human waste faster than almost anything else. Cholera outbreaks have killed more people in crisis situations than violence. Toilet paper is obvious, but somewhat overrated because alternatives exist. More important is soap. Regular hand washing with soap is non-negotiable for disease prevention. Beyond that, consider garbage bags for waste disposal, bleach for disinfection, feminine hygiene products if needed, and a plan for dealing with human waste when toilets don't flush. This might include 5-gallon buckets with tight-fitting lids, sawdust, or cat litter to cover waste, and systems for disposal away from water sources and living areas. This isn't pleasant to think about, but being prepared for sanitation keeps families healthy when everything else is falling apart. The knowledge to grow food successfully represents another irreplaceable asset. Notice the emphasis on knowledge, not just seeds, though seeds certainly matter. Gardening is a skill taking years to learn, understanding the rhythms of specific soil, climate, and growing conditions, knowing when to plant, how to deal with pests, which varieties perform well in particular areas, and managing gardens through drought, excessive rain, or unexpected frost. Someone who's been gardening for 10 years has something that can't be bought or stockpiled, practical wisdom that only comes from doing. If you're not already gardening, start now, even small, even in containers on a balcony. Not because a container garden will feed you through apocalypse, but because you'll learn. You'll make mistakes when stakes are low, discover what grows well and what doesn't, and build soil knowledge, planting knowledge, and harvesting knowledge. Store heirloom seed varieties that you can save and replant year after year. But more importantly, develop the skill to use them. Repair skills and the tools to support them become incredibly valuable when replacement isn't an option. In our current world, when something breaks, we replace it. When supply chains aren't functioning, the ability to fix things, make them work longer, or adapt them for different purposes becomes crucial. Basic sewing skills to patch clothes and repair gear, basic tool skills for structural problems and simple furniture building, the ability to sharpen knives or axes, and knowledge to maintain and repair things you depend on all matter enormously. The tools themselves, needles and thread, sewing awls for heavy materials, basic toolkits with screwdrivers and wrenches and pliers, sharpening stones, duct tape, and baling wire for improvised fixes, aren't expensive. The skills can be learned. After collapse, the person who can fix broken boots, repair, leaking buckets, or get generators running again becomes essential. Salt surprises people, but it shouldn't. Salt is one of few substances humans genuinely cannot live without. It's essential for nerve function, muscle function, and fluid balance. Without it, death occurs. Historically, salt was so valuable it was used as currency. Roman soldiers were sometimes paid in salt, giving us the word salary. Beyond biological necessity, salt preserves food. Before refrigeration, salt was how humanity kept meat from spoiling through salted fish, cured hams, and preserved vegetables. If you have meat with no refrigeration, salt stands between eating today and eating for months. Salt is incredibly cheap right now. A few dollars buys pounds that store indefinitely if kept dry. Stock plain iodized table salt for thyroid function and kosher or canning salt for food preservation. Alcohol serves multiple purposes, making it especially valuable. Yes, it can be consumed, and in high-stress, long-term crisis situations, people will want something to ease tension. Spirits like vodka and whiskey store indefinitely and trade extremely well. But alcohol is also a disinfectant, capable of sterilizing wounds, cleaning surfaces, and killing bacteria when other options aren't available. It's a solvent useful for various tasks and, in a pinch, a fire starter. Consider keeping some cheap, high-proof vodka purely for utility value. Trusted community represents something you absolutely cannot stockpile: relationships. The lone survivor fantasy is just that, a fantasy. Historically, humans survive crises through cooperation, mutual aid, divided labor, and watching each other's backs. One person or family, no matter how well prepared, can only do so much. They need sleep, have blind spots, and can't be experts at everything. Communities can have medics, gardeners, mechanics, hunters, people taking shifts on watch, diverse complementary skills, mutual defense, and psychological support through hard times. Building community takes time. It means being a good neighbor now, getting to know people around you, contributing to your community, and building trust. After collapse, people with strong community bonds will fare dramatically better than those without. Entertainment and comfort items serve as survival tools, not luxuries. This is something some miss, focusing entirely on physical survival while forgetting humans have psychological needs. We need rest, distraction, and moments of normalcy and joy, especially when everything else is chaos. Books, playing cards, board games, art supplies, musical instruments, puzzles, and simple toys for children take up almost no space, weigh almost nothing, and make enormous differences to mental health during prolonged stress. Children especially need this, as their ability to process difficult situations is tied to play. Adults need it too. Stock things you and your family actually enjoy. Communication ability, specifically, radio becomes precious when phones stop working and internet goes dark. Information becomes incredibly scarce, and in crisis, information is survival. A basic emergency radio, battery-powered or hand crank, can receive broadcasts and provide situational awareness. Ham radio licenses open up two-way communication over miles, allowing participation in emergency networks and information exchange when other systems fail. Even without going that route, have a way to receive broadcast information and know your local emergency stations. Finally, barter goods represent small, universally valued items. In prolonged collapse, regular money may stop working, but exchange doesn't stop. It just changes form. Certain items consistently become informal currency, things small, divisible, universally useful, and hard to obtain. Coffee, tobacco products, if you're comfortable stocking them, ammunition in common calibers, lighters, reading glasses in various strengths, and honey all qualify. None are expensive right now. Small quantities stored specifically for trade could become extremely valuable for acquiring things you need but didn't stock. The pattern here is clear. The most valuable things fall into two categories. First, essential supplies that are cheap now and impossible to get later. Water purification, fire starting, medical supplies, salt, light sources, hygiene items. These can be stockpiled today for very little money. Second, knowledge and relationships. The ability to purify water, grow food, repair what breaks, provide medical care, and the community bonds that mean you're not facing disaster alone. These can't be bought at any price, but can be developed starting now. Preparedness isn't about having everything. It's about knowing what actually matters and building those things steadily over time, not from panic or fear, but from the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you've taken reasonable steps to care for yourself and the people who depend on you.